Hello, lovely Insta followers. I am going live with Katie Piper, which I am incredibly excited about. And her request. And she's an amazing woman. She's the founder of the Katie Piper Foundation. She's a podcaster. Hi, Olivia. High mission to remission. Oh my goodness, there's Katie. Hi, Katie. You're going to join me in a second. But maybe I'll get her to tell you who she is. Well, I've been on her podcast. We met just before lockdown. I bumped into her having coffee, and then I was on her podcast, Extraordinary People. And then she did a live Insta with me. Hi, Patsy. And she looks like she's having difficulty joining. Hi, Chloe. If you have questions for Katie, let me know. Hi, Nadine. You're sitting on a hill listening to this. That's good. It says Katie Piper unable to join. I'll try again. There we go. Send request. Katie, I don't know if you have good Wi-Fi. I mean, you do masses of live instas. I imagine you've got amazing Wi-Fi.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm really bad with technology, and I've done this so many times, and I always have hassle getting in.
Me too. If you watched any one of my lives, there's always the first 3 minutes where I'm putting my big fat fingers in the wrong places and trying to find.
Yeah.
But anyway, so lovely to see you, and thank you for joining me, and thank you everyone who's joined us. And they're thrilled, I know, to sort of hear you. And there's so much I want to talk to you about. And I suppose my first question is to kind of have a look back on the year. You and I bumped into each other just before I was about to record your podcast.
Yeah, such a coincidence, wasn't it? And the world was about to change as well. We didn't know. Yeah.
And we'd never met before, and yet I recognized you because I was doing this thing. So that was a really nice thing. And then we had a lovely connection on your podcast, and you came on a previous live with me.
Yes,
and
yeah.
You've had, I mean, I've been looking at your Insta. You've had an extraordinarily busy year.
Yeah, I suppose. And so it's strange, isn't it? Because it's not been my usual face-to-face interactions. But I have been very fortunate that I've carried on working in a different way. But I also think having children that were at home more, it felt even busier than ever because there were other hats to wear that I didn't always wear.
So what was that? I mean, everyone's saying, hi, Katie, you're looking lovely. You're such an inspiration. That's so nice. I mean, I don't know anyone that enjoyed homeschooling for one thing.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, it was
New
really
credit for teachers, right?
well, yeah, I think you really understand the level of patience and how it's such a vocation, you know, how they must be so passionate to endure this, and trying really hard myself to step back and remember this isn't the normal way for my daughter either, and she doesn't, you know, choose this way of learning. And, you know, it was really, I had to kind of sort of step back and say, actually, be kinder, because this isn't how she learns maths, this isn't how she learns her English. And I learned a lot more. I mean, it sounds a bit shameful to say, but I learned so much new stuff about my eldest daughter.
Did you?
Yeah.
About who she was, how she learned.
Yeah, and how she responds in group settings and around her peers. And then I would go and offload to my mum on FaceTime or on the phone, and my mum would say, it's you, that's who you were.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, my mum's been really helpful because she's a retired school teacher.
Oh, wow.
So she was helpful for practical advice as well. But yeah, there's, you know, my eldest is 7 years old, and there's so many similarities to the type of 7-year-old that I was that she is. So it's quite frightening.
And therapists say that often what we most don't like about other people is what we most don't like about ourselves. I don't know if that's true with you, but often that can kind of bring a very big response in us.
I think so, because I noticed it too. If I'm being unkind or critical about people, I always think it's because they remind you of your own failings. You
Yeah.
know, when if people are sort of talking about behind their back, you're usually really talking about yourself. And I
Yes.
catch myself doing it if I'm ever jealous. You know, I think, oh, this is really about me. That, you know, I've really got to put this energy into actually changing that, which is
Yeah.
sort of more productive. You know.
Yeah. So I agree. I completely agree. And I so you were busier than ever, but it felt more different than ever. Did it feel quite alienating doing it without being in physical contact with your team, say, or going out and doing events? Did you feel, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's difficult because I think through my work, I've got so many different lives through my career, which is something I love. You know, I'm really grateful for that. So, you know, with my charity, we do completely different work to say what I would be doing in like a modeling shoot or certain types of TV shows. So I got to see how the lockdown was for lots of different types of people. So I would never moan about my experience because I know it's really privileged. You know, we didn't have to move house. I didn't get let go from a company or anything like that. But it sort of made me, it reminded me of stuff because I think my experience is slightly different. I've had huge changes before. I've experienced massive loss before and had to adapt. So it just reminded me again of that situation. You know, I feel like I really got to know myself well in my 20s. So it reminded me again of what I already knew was that all of my work, a portion of it is for money to live, but a massive part of it is because I'm a people person. I thrive on connection. I need fulfillment. Otherwise, I have a void. So that was my suffering that, yeah, you could adapt and earn money in other ways from home. But money doesn't make me happy, you know.
No, people make you happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Love and connection.
Absolutely. So I was trying to sort of seek that out, create it, and like you know, lives, Zooms, but sometimes that can actually turn out to be worse because then you sort of put the laptop down and think, I really miss that person. I wish that had been.
Yeah, I want a hug. I want a
Yeah,
blooming hug. You know, we're touch hungry and hug, you know, hug hungry. And I was wondering with you, and actually I was wondering it for myself too, what is the difference between what you share on Insta and how we live?
very different actually. You know, if I was to because my life's not that interesting. I would say Instagram is 2% of my life. And that is strategic. There's a lot of reasons for that. You know, Instagram is my way to connect
It's a
with people.
business, isn't it? It's part
Yeah,
of the business.
it's part of my work. But I do like the connection with people.
Me
Um,
too.
yeah, so there is authenticity in that.
Yeah.
You know, if there was no interaction back, then you know it would feel quite soulless. But also, I'm a very private person, so I like to keep safe online, and I don't really know if I want my children going online, particularly, or definitely not in the near future. So I have to sort of
I
practice.
see you cover their faces.
Yeah, so I kind of have to practice what I preach. If I'm going to tell them that, they can't then log on and see me sharing everything we do online. So I have to have that balance.
Yeah, I mean, and everyone's saying what an inspiration you are. And I think I agree with you. You know, I never really used Insta before lockdown. I was very, very new to it. I think I opened the account in December, November. And I feel like I know some of the followers and that we have a real relationship and I recognize
Yeah.
everyone's names. And that does feel very authentic and very
Mm.
real. But also, it's me with makeup on, it's
Yeah.
me with a clean shirt on.
Yeah.
It's not me kind of furious or upset or bored or you know, when you were talking about homeschooling, and you know, I'm a grandmother, so my children are all grown up with their own kids. But my daughter, who's homeschooling, reminded me of something I hadn't forgotten, which was that when I tried to teach her French when she was about 7, I threw the book at her. I mean, I had no patience
This is
whatsoever.
familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, it doesn't, you know, I show my empathic listening side, and that isn't all of me. You know, I can be impatient and cross, and I
Yeah.
think it's important that everybody knows that there's all these sides to us as well.
Yeah, I think some authenticity and to be transparent is important, because otherwise I feel like I'm doing people a disservice if they think
To
I'm
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, 'cause I'm not robotically positive and happy. But equally, I wouldn't come on here every day moaning about the homeschooling,
No,
moaning, because
no,
I don't think people come to my account for that, you know.
no.
So yeah, it
And
is that.
also, misery is contagious, as
Mm,
is positivity and happiness. You know, there's that research which is incredibly powerful, that if you have numbers of people in your life who are unhappy, you're more likely to be unhappy. And that can go for people who are neighbours, who people are quite distant. So if you
mm,
choose, I don't mean happy, but kind of optimistic or have a better sense of well-being,
yeah,
you are likely to have more well-being.
I really found that I had to take that quite seriously in lockdown, in terms of I had to put in sort of boundaries in place with people. Handful of people I know in my personal life would be WhatsApping me links to various news articles, headlines, all around the pandemic. And in the end, I had to say to a couple of them, please stop sending me those links. I don't want to see them.
No,
It's not helpful to me. And you know,
no,
one of them did get offended, but I tried to explain that boundary. But I'm not worried about people getting offended by boundaries anymore, because I
no.
feel I just articulate it politely and I say I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
protecting myself.
important.
Yeah. So
You know, good fences make good neighbours, as they say.
that's true.
Um, as I was going to ask you about your operation. I hadn't clocked that you're having another operation. Well, obviously I wouldn't, because I don't know you that well enough. And I just wanted to talk to you about that. I felt so much for you. Um,
I knew it would be happening, and it was a great time for it to happen, because you know I never get recovery time. Usually, I need to be photographed, wearing makeup, things like that. So it was the perfect time to have downtime and not feel like I'm missing opportunity, which is something I really sort of struggle with. Um, and it was inevitable, because it was skin grafts on my arm, because I've had about 3 or 4 ops spread out, and it's all skin grafts on my eyes, because
oh, just the
they are.
idea of skin grafts, so sore. Is it so
Oh,
sore?
it's all relative, isn't it? Really, what's one person's pain is another person's minor discomfort.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's really different when I know I'm burnt and I know that my skin grafts will shrink over the years. So I already accept that's my path. Whereas if you had to have eye surgery tomorrow, that would feel very, well, you
It'd be a
hadn't.
bigger leap for me. It would be
Yeah,
bigger. And in a
yeah.
way, that's what I meant to say when you were speaking, when you talked about lockdown, is that you have already been through an enormous tragedy and a crisis where you were forced to recognize your lack of control, and you were forced to learn how to adapt.
Mhm.
And you would never want to be reminded of that. But actually, it has given you a sense of perspective that is different to maybe mine, about what you can cope with
Yeah.
and what is important and what in the end doesn't matter.
It's so true. I mean, it sounds arrogant, because it's not really a British way to kind of talk about yourself, but I genuinely believe, you know, my rooted beliefs about myself is I'm indestructible, I'm a survivor,
That's
and you know,
amazing. I love
yeah,
that.
and
I love that.
it sounds Americanized, doesn't it?
No, I don't think it sounds American. I think there's a bit stiff upper lip. That is that I'm gritty.
Mm,
I can. In America, they say I've got this, or you know, I
yeah.
can do hard things or something. But you're saying I'm strong. I can do this, and saying it to yourself is means it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, so I try to affirm it, where I say, well, you know, life is kind of this sort of weird journey, isn't it? Of sometimes you think, God, my life's amazing, and other times you think, why is this happening to our family? It's
Yeah,
so unfair, and
it's so
it's
shit.
yeah, and sometimes it can be so hideous, and then other times you feel like so lucky, like you're living your dream. And So whatever state I'm in, I just always think, no, I'm really robust. And even if the outside's falling to bits, there's something in me there's a core, an inner core. And I think, you know, everyone else here in the comments now, that's what
No
you've been through.
limiting beliefs for you, Katie. That's true.
Yeah, that sums it up. And we've all been through this in 2020. So everyone else listening should also be feeling that way, even if it's a fraction of it, because they did survive that year in their own way, you know?
And that we do have more capacity, you know, like that Mandela quote. It isn't, what is it about? It's not the fear itself, but the fear of fear. Or we are stronger than we imagine we are. Like,
Yeah,
there's two of them. I can't remember who said
yeah.
what.
Because it's so true, isn't it? That the fear stops us doing everything,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
So, what I'm imagining you're saying is, I now have a base of endurance and grit that I know I can survive incredibly difficult things because I've done it. I don't want them, and I may even dread, say, the operation, or I may feel fear. And of course, the pit surgery is painful, but I have a belief, my belief informed by my experience, which is how all beliefs are formed. It tells me I can survive this, and that in itself helps me cope with it.
hmm I would definitely say for me, pain in the last 15 years has always been a pathway to get to where I want to be. So it's just the route. So I don't really see pain as negative, physical or mental.
That's
It's just
incredible. Can you hear yourself saying that?
but
I don't see pain as negative.
it's just a necessity. Like, you know, when I was on my beginning of my journey of recovery, my surgeon said to me, it's a necessity, not just to get to good quality of life, functioning. You know, I have to have my eye surgery because I want to preserve my eyesight. It's a necessity. So that pain really is a place where I will travel along to get to gratitude. You know, like, what an amazing thing that I can have this surgery. What an amazing thing I've got my eyesight. So the pain is in, when you take it like that, it's a very small part of the ultimate result. It's not the everything.
That makes real sense. And actually, it fits with the premise. The first book I wrote was about grief, it was called Grief Works. And the premise of my whole book is that pain is the agent of change.
Mm,
That the things that we do to try and block pain and have control over the things like grief that we have no control over are in the end the things that harm us.
mm,
And so that when we can let the pain of, say, having no control over COVID, having no control over the fact that you have to have operations, when you don't fight it and you paradoxically find a way of living with what you thought was unbearable, you incrementally adapt, and that is how you heal.
yeah.
And in a way, that is exactly what you're saying, is that you kind of see it as pain is part of your process of how you get to the place where you can then be at peace with yourself. And in this
Mm.
case, you can see.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true because I even experienced it again in 2020. You know, that discomfort, that pain being a catalyst for change. You know, I changed in a way that was forced. I wouldn't have chosen to change in that way. I didn't enjoy the process.
No,
Um, but the outcome was better. So, you know, COVID forced me to change the time that I gave to certain things, the way I worked, and I hated it. But my family benefited from it. And
because
there's
they
no
saw
way,
so much more of you.
yeah, and there's no way I would have like instigated that myself. You know, it was only that situation that made me do that.
And so, are there things, having recognized that the family, your children and your husband benefited, and you kind of adapted, are there things that now looking to the future that you will rejig to include some of that?
There are things I can do, but there are things I'm nervous about that will again become out of my control because, you know, I'm not saying it's harder for women, but as a woman, you know, I do some domestic things at home, some homemaking. also a mother. I just need to shut my door because there's a loud noise. Sorry. I don't want to disturb our sound. That's better. Yeah, so as a mother, you know, I have my domestic roles, I have my career, I have my parenting, and I'm fearful that when the world does return, one of those things will have to go because
Before.
at the yeah, and it's hard because at the moment I am able to work, do the school run, and tidy up, and that's great. And I would love to be able to sort of still do that a few days a week, but I don't know. I work in a very competitive world. So it depends if as a collective group we all continue like that. If we don't, I don't know what the future will be like. It's difficult.
I mean, I guess you can't predict the future, can you? And I think, you know, like most offices are talking about hybrid working. And yeah, I understand that, you know, you can't always choose how you work. You can't say to the people you have a partnership with, you know, I'm going to do this online. But I imagine there will be this hybrid world where people aren't commuting and they're working from home 2 days a week or whatever it is.
I'd like
And
that balance, I think.
yeah, I mean, the thing that people have talked to me a lot about is, like a lot of people, I think the research shows 25% of families are happier post-COVID. That leaves an awful lot that aren't. I mean, I think there's 25% are unhappier, did much worse, 25% who are sort of okay, or 50% that were okay, and 25% who were happier. And I think the biggest thing that made people happy was time affluence, having time to be together, to hang out, to make a cup of tea in the kitchen, not that constant kind of busyness.
Yeah.
And that sounds a bit like what you're wanting, is that your role as a mum and being at home, you find something in yourself that you hadn't had that much time for before, and you don't want to lose that. But also you don't want to lose your career. So it's an incredibly difficult juggle. And, you know, it is by no means the same for women as mothers, whatever people say. You know, all the research shows that women were doing most of the parenting during lockdown. Women really suffered in lockdown. They lost their jobs.
Yeah. I mean, it was, especially, I found it hard that my job is often recording, so it always requires silence. So it was quite hard. You know,
Must have been impossible.
3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And it was hard for my husband because in the first lockdown, his job couldn't, you know, he was a builder and they didn't work in the first lockdown. And he wasn't able to adapt and do Instagram lives of builders. You know, there was nothing.
No. There was nothing. He's in or out.
Yeah, his purpose had gone. The kids were supposed to be schooling. I had to work in silence, which wasn't really possible. So I was actually now having to reject them when they were knocking on the door in a way that's worse than when I was out at work, because I was there and they are too young to understand. Yeah, so that was really hard. But as
And
things
awful, the feeling of saying no, and also being cross at them for knocking on the door. Kind of, it pulls on every part of you, like the loving,
yeah,
wanting to see them, like, no, go away. Then, oh my
yeah,
goodness, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad mother. It's so complicated.
yeah, it's really complicated. And then, you know, majority of my work involves being happy and assertive and in control and positive. So then sort of knowing there's a screaming child on the other side of the door and you're just game face, you know. But I mean, it did get better. And I think one of the things that I have found a positive is social pressure has changed. So, you know, the old me at the weekends would always organise trips out for the kids because I felt guilty about being in London all week working. So the weekends would be really busy with farms and zoos and whatever. Whereas now we just kind of go to the forest.
I can't hear you. I don't know why I can't hear you. Is it me or you? I can see you, but I can't hear you. So just talk to me. Do you want to try going off and come? I don't know. Can you go off and come on again? Can you hear me? You can't hear me at all. What's happened? Does anyone know what's going on? I can't hear Katie either. Katie, do you want to, we've only got 5 minutes, but we may end, but do you want to try leaving and then coming back for the last 5 minutes? You can hear me. Yeah. Something's happened to her audio. I have no idea what. No sound. I'll tap. Katie left. Yeah, she's gonna. I'll try and get her back. I'll try again. There we go. Sorry, everyone. Tech, eh? The joys of tech. Oh, she's back. There you go.
Sorry, somebody tried to ring my phone and I rejected them, and then for some reason my volume went. I'm back.
The joys of tech. You're back.
Yeah.
We were talking about
The social pressure.
Social pressure.
Yeah.
And that. So, do you feel a bit freer now that you'll be able to have a better no at weekends, to have more just you time as a family?
Yeah, and it makes me realise I was sort of getting it wrong with the kids, because giving them constant entertainment out and about probably wasn't the best way to prepare them for the reality of what life is. And the guilt that I felt from being at work wasn't, I thought I was compensating by doing those things. And
By
actually,
making it fun, sort of thing.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of got that completely wrong. So yeah.
You
So it's
probably
been a
didn't get it completely wrong, Katie.
couple,
You probably got the balance a little bit wrong.
yeah, and it's been a good eye opener to sort of see that and say, right, okay, actually I don't have to do this every weekend. This isn't changing things for the better, you know, and actually I'm enough for them, just me being here with them. And that was quite a revolution, really, in that sense.
Yeah, but that's a wonderfully powerful revelation in a way, isn't it? That I'm enough for them as a mum. I mean, that's a wonderful feeling, you know.
Yeah, it really is. And it's hard, isn't it? Because other people can tell you that. But I think you have to find that out yourself.
Yeah. I mean, the difference between knowing for yourself and what other people telling you is about as wide as the sea. But what I really notice and have been so impressed with you is that you're a learning being. You're always open to kind of reflecting and learning and growing. And that is how people thrive. So it's not like you have your set beliefs, like I'm a survivor and this is it, this is me done. But you're constantly feel, whenever I've spoken to you, I kind of feel that you're so open to your own feedback to yourself, from feedback from the people around you, and that you respond to that adaptively. And that's an amazing thing.
I think I feel my most alive when I'm learning,
Do
because
you?
because I always feel really like curious and fascinated by people. And I don't know if this means I'm dissatisfied, but I always feel like this can't be it. You know, what else could I learn? What else there's so many people and things out there. I haven't met them all, and I don't know everything. I don't know anything. What more could I know? I'd like, you know, and I always find that quite exciting. You know.
And curiosity is a tenet for life. You know, staying curious, staying learning into your 80s and 90s, or however old one lives till, is one of the things that enable you to thrive. People who kind of think they know it all and just kind of shut down, like, you know, I'm right and that's it. You know, they don't thrive.
Yeah.
And so that's, maybe you should be a therapist, you know, Katie.
Oh, no.
I think you'd love to be a therapist.
I mean, one side of me is I'm actually also a very nosy person. So,
Oh, that would work.
yeah, for that side, I would probably enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like every time I meet a new person, I've found in my life, different people from different walks of life have introduced me to new chapters of my life. Because it's so basic to, like, if you look at the root of what happens to me, it's one person's idea that if somebody isn't attractive, particularly a woman, well, then it's over for them in society. And this whole concept of once a woman's a certain age or has a child, or
You're invisible. Like my age, I'm invisible at 61.
yeah,
I'm done for. Yeah.
it's so limiting to say that. Like, who is anybody to say that anyone holds any more or less value? We evolve and we move on and we move away from people that don't value us because of X, Y, or Z. But there's, I mean, even with you know, when we see people passing away in their sort of 80s and 90s, and we read about their lives, and they were doing things right up to the day, the week they passed, and you think, how exciting that
Yeah.
chapter of that being 90 could have been one of the most fulfilling
In
decades
their
of,
life.
yeah. So that helps me feel quite excited for life, and I don't fear aging. I feel like it's such a privilege, and I never believed I'd get the chance to age.
Oh, Katie, that's so touching and profound, isn't it? Really is. It sort of makes me cry that when you have really, when your life has been properly threatened and you didn't expect to live, then conversely, the fact that you are living, you recognize how precious life is.
Mm.
And it means that you really value it and have huge gratitude for it, which is incredible.
Yeah, so somebody just put Captain Tom Moore
Yeah,
on it. Yeah, and actually, he's a great example, isn't he? Of,
he was amazing. He was 100.
yeah, and also, do you know what I loved about him? Was this thing of he saw a problem or an injustice or something he wanted to change, and he didn't wait for those around him to do that. He action pointed that and did what he could within his resources. And I love that attitude. You know,
So do I. And like you've done with the Katie Piper Foundation. I mean,
mm,
amazing what you've done. And that must, we need to stop in a sec, I realize, but that must influence your recognition about difference. I've been thinking, I'm writing a new book, I've been thinking a lot about difference, how we're so judgmental, and all the different differences of gender, sexuality, body positive, racial differences, you know, all this. The more we allow difference and judge less, the better everybody will be.
And if you're not a judgmental person, it feels so simple, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
you know, we are as one, and you know, if you
We're
if you have
part of
genuine,
the human family.
yeah, and if you have genuine love for everybody like that, you just it's hard to understand why other people can't be like that. And you know, I suppose with me, like you said, seeing the fragility of life, you really understand that kind of, it's cheesy, but that expression of life being too short. And if you're a hateful person, you know, who are you really punishing? You know, carrying
Yourself.
that around.
Yeah.
You know, you're not really punishing the people you think you discriminate against. It's all inside, and it's so toxic.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna, some people are asking some questions. So just before we go,
Okay.
yes, I can see the chat, and yes, the IG is going onto my account, so you can watch it again. And I agree, Susie, humans are kinder than we think we are. And Katie, you obviously you are like Katie, or Kate, you're like Katie, that you flipped having poor sight in one eye so that you can see more. And I agree, Prince Philip was a really good example of someone who really kept going and learning and keeping on all his life.
Mm-hmm.
And Uda, there is this thing, trauma gives us such amazing opportunity for growth. And I've talked about it before, the research all over the world really about post-traumatic growth, that Katie is an absolute living inspirational example of post-traumatic growth, which the growth never denies or diminishes the level of the loss or the level of the suffering. But what people find is that when they have survived something they thought they could never survive, and in your case, you actually thought you wouldn't live, but it could be psychologically as well, their perception of themselves and their belief system and their perception of the world and what matters in the world changes. And often they experience that as growth. That, as in you say, you learn that you have grit, that you can survive. But also it means that you know that you're adaptive and that you value the core things in life, which is being alive and love. And that's the thing I get most from you, is that love and connection is your medicine. Love is the thing that keeps you alive and keeps you going. But also love and connection is why you're so successful, because it's that you're the real deal.
Oh, thank you. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I suppose for me, it is my food, it is my existence, it is my passion. And I suppose, like you say, if you do something you're passionate about, then it shows. But you know, it's a
And
hard.
it's and people move towards you
Yeah.
when they feel your loving and your intention and your goodwill and your authenticity. They want more of you. I
Mm.
want more of you. I wish we could go on talking for ages. I wish you were in a room and I could give you a hug and we could have a cup of tea together.
Yeah. I think it's a good advice though to always take yourself back to your intentions, because that's how you stay authentic, you know? That's your sort
Totally,
of anchor, I think.
totally. They're really good. And even having just knowing what your kind of 3 or 4 basic intentions are for your day, for your life, for your family, I think is a very helpful touchstone for your life. If you're feeling a
Mm.
bit lost, like go back to your intentions is a really good route to kind of put yourself back on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. And I must say to anyone that's listening who maybe hasn't had children or even got married, it wasn't having my children and getting married that put me in that good place. That was actually before that happened to me, and I believe if I hadn't done it in that order, then I don't think I would have stayed married for very long. So I'd never want people to think the ending of my story was children and a marriage fulfilled and completed me, because I very much felt that woman before, so that I could then give myself to them, you know.
That you sorted yourself out, you found a way of being lovable, being able to be in relationship, of being able
Yeah.
to receive love and give love and have hope for a new future and a loving relationship, which if you hadn't got to that place beforehand, you probably wouldn't have been able to hold on to it, is what I understand you saying.
And equally, it's absolutely to have, you know, absolutely possible to have this level of happiness and understanding of yourself being single. You know, it's not the
Yes.
root to all happiness. It's not the
No,
sort of answer, you know, it's not the be all to end all.
no. I mean, I think what the research shows is that the quality of our relationships, and that doesn't have to be partnerships and love relationships, but the quality of our relationships predicts the quality of our life.
Mm-hmm.
So that if we're single and we want to be single, and there is, you know, quite a big percentage of people who now choose to remain single, or polyamorous, or whatever the way people choose to live, like we're saying, you know, whatever works for you, let it work for you. But love and connection is the single biggest thing that matters most. When people look back at their lives, that what they matter most, what they care about most, is the quality of their relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And you, I mean, there you are. You're a living example of good relationships.
Well, thank you.
And I hope in the unlock that you go slowly and gently at your own pace. And I hope I ever get to see you for a proper live hug
I
one
know,
day.
I know. Yeah, that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
That'd be
it would
really
be
lovely.
really lovely.
Yeah.
So thank you, Katie. So much love to you.
It's always a pleasure. I love spending time with you, even if it's virtually.
Even virtually is better than nothing. Thank God for virtually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone that joined as well.
And thank you, everyone that joined. I'm
Yeah.
sorry I kind of grabbed Katie. I didn't want to ask all your questions because I wanted her all to myself, which is probably a bit mean. But mainly they were just saying how much they love you, which is completely right. It's very lovable.
Oh, well, I don't take it for granted. So thank you, everybody.
No, good. All righty. Lots of love.
Take care. Lots of
Bye-bye.
love. Bye bye.
Bye.